Dave Cowens, born on October, let's get this right, October 25th, 1948, in Newport, Kentucky. Now, Cowens, who you see there, pictured with the inimitable Dr. J. They were in the NBA at the same time. Dr. J came in 1976, but Dave Cowens was already there. That's right, he was already there. He got there in 1971, but we'll get to that. Cowens was born in Newport, Kentucky. He attended the he attended Florida State University from 1967 till 1970. He actually graduated on time, or they kicked him out on time. Said, "Listen, you can't stay any longer. It's time for you to get out, get to moving, buddy." And so he did. While he was there, though, he averaged 19 points a game and 17.2 rebounds. He is Florida State's all-time leading rebounder. I mean, geez, that's 50 years later, 54 years later. He is still their all-time rebounder. Huh. That doesn't happen very easy. Not 52 years later. Somebody should have came and broke your records 50 years later. But 50 years later, he is still the all-time rebounder. Just goes to show you, when you're good, you're good. Okay. When Thomas was selected in the 1970 draft with the fourth overall pick by the Boston Celtics, pick number 4 overall, no one was predicting big things from him or for him. As we can see with that Dr. J picture, he wasn't that big. I mean, he's not towering over Dr. J, who was 6'7". Cowens was listed as 6'8", 240 pounds. Though he was strong and he had superior jumping ability, the experts remarked that he was undersized for the center position. But they didn't factor in Cowens' height, which is something Red Auerbach did. Red Auerbach made the pick. And those who were around at the time, uh, let's just put it this way. I remember the pick. We're not, we're not overwhelmed by the pick. In fact, nobody in Boston was overwhelmed by the Dave Cowens pick because remember, Bill Russell leaves in 1969. He's leaving. David Cowens is coming in 1970. He's coming in a year later. So you went from Russell to Cowens, and nobody in Boston was predicting anything great. As a matter of fact, they were lambasting Red Auerbach, to tell you the truth. Yes, the great Red Auerbach was being lambasted. Run up a flagpole for the pick. But he would have the last laugh. Cowens came in. He averaged 17 points and 15 rebounds as a rookie. 17 points and 15 rebounds a game as a rookie. Yeah, pretty darn good numbers for a rookie. He was the co-winner with Jeff Petrie of the NBA Rookie of the Year award, um, and he had another dubious distinction. He led the NBA in personal fouls. The guy was all heart. He was all effort. He was giving 125, 30%, 40, 50% every night. So occasionally he fouled out. Let's just put it that way. In his second year, Cowens averaged 20 points a game and 16 rebounds. So I should say it like this. He averaged 20 points and 16 rebounds a game. And he was named the league's most valuable player. This is just in the second year. He more than surpassed what anybody thought was going to happen in Boston and outside of Boston. Because remember, they have some pretty good players in the NBA right at this time. Abdul Jabbar comes in. Will Chamberlain's still playing. Bob Lanier, Willis Reed, and you got Dave Cowens. So Dave Cowens comes in and dominates to a sense. I mean, the guy's quick. He's a quick, strong, agile, 6'8" guy with superior jumping ability. I mean, the guy could jump out the gym. And he had an outside shot, which was very new. And now every center shoots outside now. but they weren't shooting outside back in the 60s and 70s. So he added a dimension that most teams didn't have, and they used it. Now, he was named the MVP in 1974, and the Celtics had the best record in the league. But John Havlicek broke his arm or something to that extent. He had a injury in the playoffs, and it sunk him. But in his third year, guess what happened? The Celtics, with JoJo White, Charlie Scott, John Havlicek, and Dave Cowens, Paul Silas also win it. They win the NBA championship, 1974. He led the Celtics to the championship win, and he did it over one of the greatest names of the era, one of the greatest teams, too. That team was the Milwaukee Bucks with Oscar Robertson and Kareem Abdul Jabbar. John McMillan, jeez, just taking me back. Those guys, I think they had won the year before. That's right, they had won the year before. They were the defending champions, and here were the Celtics. Were the Celtics the defending champions, or would the Bucks win it the next year? Well, it would cement 1 year difference in between all the two of them. The Bucks were the team to beat, and they came out of the West by beating the Lakers, beating um, Will Chamberlain and Jerry West and the Lakers, routed them, had nothing for them. They had reached their peak, but they ran into the buzzsaw called the Boston Celtics and Dave Cowens. Big Red, as Johnny most like to call him, Big Red, the Big Redhead. And the guy had a motor, and he ran, and they defeated the Bucks in 7 games. Very tough series. I remember the series because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gets the ball with about 5 or 6 seconds left. Celtics are up by 1. They get the ball to Kareem on the right side. He goes into a little dilly dally, dribbles right, turns over, and shoots the purest, smoothest hook shot you've ever seen. Like a guy who's just tossing something over his shoulder and was straight through the nets. And they won the game and forced the game 7. That was how good the Milwaukee Bucks were. That was how good the Boston Celtics were. And so he went to 7 games. And and the Celtics were winning 7 games thanks to Dave Cowens. He had some pretty good figures that day. Okay. 2 years later, Cowens won his second NBA championship. Not bad for a guy who was panned as a mistake. That Red Auerbach didn't know what he was doing. He had lost his fastball. If he ever had a curve, he had forgot to throw it with Cowens. But Cowens wins 2 championships with the Celtics. And um, doing pretty good. But something is happening. The following year, 1977, Cowens left the club in November. Now remember that it starts in October, right? Season starts in October. He left in November, so he left after 1 month. And the official reason given was that he had personal reasons. Well, he did and he didn't. Dave Cowens had personal reasons because he was burnt out. Being the undersized center, a guy who had to give 110, 120, 130 every night to compete with the Abdul Jabbars, the Chamberlains, the Laniers, the Willis Reeds, the Bill Waltons. Yeah, the Bill Waltons. Bill Walton was around at that time, and he was a pretty good guy. He was a pretty good center. Um, so we have this guy who has to compete with these guys, and it wasn't easy. He was wearing himself out. He was breaking himself down, and it was a bit much for him. I had a hard time. I'm gonna give you a shot with him and Bill Walton. Yeah, there he goes. So he was burnt out. Dave Big Red Cowens, Mr. Hustle, Mr. Give It All, Mr. Dive on the Floor at 100 miles an hour. That guy couldn't find it in himself to play. He knew what it was to play at a high level. He knew what it was to have that intensity, and he no longer felt it. So he took most of the year off. He came back toward the end of the year, but they didn't. They bowed out the playoffs. Couldn't get it done. He came back and tried one more year the next year. It was 1979, and that was it. That was Dave Cowens. In that year, 1979, he averaged only 14 points and 8 rebounds a game. It was time to retire. Dave Cowens is remembered for his intensity on the court. He was quick, fast, strong, and could shoot the outside shot in an era when most centers played close to the basket. In 1996, Dave Cowens was honored as one of the league's greatest of all time, being named to the NBA's 50th anniversary team. In October of 2021, Connors was again honored. Cowens was again honored as one of the league's greatest players of all time, being named to the NBA's 75th anniversary team. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he was really that good. He was. So, Dave, thanks for the memories. And happy birthday. I'm not going to say how old you are, but I have a feeling your hair is no longer gray.